I would like to welcome you to the Interfaith Centre here at DCU. This is the fifth in a series of 6 interviews for the Talking Heads programme. This week, I would like to welcome Rabbi Zalman Lent, leader of the Jewish community here in Dublin. Rabbi, welcome to the Interfaith Centre.
Thank you. Thanks for having me over.
First of all, to put a historical context for the viewers, what is the earliest reference of the Jewish people here in Ireland?
Earlier reference would be around 1,000 years ago. I think the Annals of Inishfallen, it says that Jews were here, maybe trading. So that would be the very earliest. But most of the Jewish community came here, late 1800s, early 1900s, that kind of time.
And in the 1700s, there was a landmark moment where the Irish House of Commons introduced a bill which involved the naturalisation of persons professing the Jewish religion. Mm-hmm. What significance did that have for the Jewish people at the time?
Well, I'd say it just gave them, allowed them, freedom of mobility. But there was only a very small number came. Maybe a couple of hundred Jews would have been here at that point. Mm. It's really once they fled from Eastern Europe. That's when the numbers started to make it to Ireland.
And when you speak about the numbers coming here to Ireland, in the mid-1800s they came here in great numbers from the Eastern Europe?
That's right, yeah. Lithuania, mainly Lithuania. So you're talking, so I think in 1901, I'm not that great with the dates, but I think around 1901 there was about 3,500 to 4,000 Jewish people. It's never been a very big community. It's always been under 5,000, I think. Mm-hmm. So,
but it grew quite rapidly in the 1800s, in that period.
That's right, yeah.
Mm. Now, just in the mid-1800s, the period of the Great Famine, there was a moment, it was a period that historically shows that the Jewish community were very proactive in helping the Irish people, the Rothschilds in particular. Can you expand on that?
I don't know too much about it. I know that President McAleese was when she was in the States recently, maybe a year or two ago, she went to one of the synagogues where they donated money for the famine victims. But Jews have always been, charities a cornerstone of the faith, and so they've always tried to look out for those that were in need. Mm-hmm. But I don't know what the numbers were or exactly how it worked.
I mean, the first instance at the turn of the century of blatant anti-Semitism in this country was the boycott in Limerick. How did that come about, and what is the feeling amongst the Jewish community today about that incident?
I think it's seen as just a one-off. They call it the Limerick pogrom. It wasn't really a pogrom. I think it's just seen as a one-off negative incident that happened. And historically Ireland has a very low rate of anti-Semitism, so Jews have always been grateful. The Jews that have lived here have been allowed to integrate well into society, to fulfill positions here. They've never been limited, and they've always been grateful for that, for being able to find a peaceful home to live here. So anti-Semitism, I think, historically has always been very low here.
And at the time, Joe Briscoe, father of Robert Briscoe, said that the very same thing, that it was just an aberration and a pretty perfect record as regards the Irish people, as regards the Jewish community.
Yeah, Joe's father.
Yeah,
Robert. Yeah, it was an aberration, I would say. Yeah.
During and after the Second World War, there was official indifference of the government here as regards Jewish people seeking refuge in this country.
Indifference is a bit generous, I think.
Yeah. Can you expand on that, please?
Well, it was, there was a very strong negative attitude to allowing refugees in. I think there was a total of maybe 20 or 30 refugees that were allowed in. So many perished because they had nowhere to go. And then again, after the war, the large numbers did arrive here. But during the war, before and during, it was severely limited.
Mm-hmm. But I mean, at the population at the time, just at that period in the mid-40s, was 5,500, whereas the Jewish population stands at 2,000 today. Yeah. Would that have been a very contributing factor to that?
Oh no, I don't think so. No, I think the Jews that came here after the war, they were stopping off on the way somewhere. They were escaping, looking for a place to leave. The people left here, like many others, they left, to look for a living, to be able to raise a family. They moved to places where they could find a job. They looked for bigger Jewish communities. Some of them moved to Israel. So yeah, many different factors. Mm-hmm. They didn't leave because of any anti-Semitic incidents or government policy or anything like that. They were welcome here and they felt at home.
Mm-hmm. And the places of Jewish interest here in Ireland. Mm-hmm. Can you fill us in on those?
There is not a huge amount. In Dublin, there's a couple of synagogues and there's a Jewish museum. and there are a small number of former synagogues. They're now apartment buildings or office blocks. So that's really all there is here. There's actually one interesting site is the old Jewish cemetery in Ballybock, which is quite an interesting place to visit. And I think there's actually a book of poems, I think it's called Elegy, Mud Island Elegy, that was written about the graves in the Ballybock cemetery. That's quite interesting. In Cork you have a synagogue, which is a beautiful building. There's no real community left there. There's only a handful of Jews in Cork, but there's a lovely synagogue still there, and bits and pieces here and there.
Mm-hmm. And there's Shalom Park in Cork as well. Park is where Jewish town was in Cork. There's Shalom Park.
Shalom Park?
Shalom Park, yeah.
And there's a bridge as well. I think they named that for the Jewish Lord Mayor, Gerald Goldberg, which was named the Passover Bridge.
In the early 1950s, the Jewish community formed the Stratford College. 60 years on, what significance does that have for the Jewish community?
Oh, the Jewish school is terribly important. Education is, the people of the book, Jewish education is vital. Now the numbers, since the school's founded, the numbers of the Jewish community have shrunk quite a lot. So it's changed. It used to be almost all Jewish students. It's now, the national school would be half and half Jewish and half not. And then the senior school, much smaller number of Jewish students. Most of the body would be non-Jewish, so it's a more multi-denominational school now. But great school, great environment, encouragement of, it's Jewish ethos, but shared with everyone. So it's a lovely institution.
Mm-hmm. And for Jewish people who would like to trace their heritage here in Ireland, how would they go about that?
There's actually a fellow by the name of Stuart Rosenblatt. He spent many years of his life just volunteering, dedicated to gathering together all the genealogical information. He's got this incredibly impressive work, many books with family charts, and he's got everything, all the documentation, all the history. It's really created this masterpiece, pulled everything together. So he's got the whole thing on a computer file. Lots of people come here, they search for their family names, and he'll try and do what he can to help. So good guy to get in contact with.
Rabbi, I believe you were born in Britain, correct?
Yeah.
So what was it like growing up in the Jewish community in post-war Britain?
Post-war is a long time ago. Growing up in Britain was fine. It's obviously a much bigger Jewish community, much more visible Jewish presence, and with that you get a much greater level of anti-Semitism. So I grew up in obviously looking visibly Jewish and in a Jewish area, so lots of anti-Semitism, which wasn't very pleasant. I don't think any kid growing up or teenager needs to have that. So once I left England, it was nice to go to other countries where it was, I spent time in Australia and New Zealand, in the States, and then in Ireland, where completely different attitudes. So now, not everywhere in England is like that. It wasn't a fantastic experience all the time. Or maybe as a child it was just maybe exaggerated. As I go back now, it's not as bad as I thought.
So
it
you
was,
find the level of anti-Semitism has decreased with time, very much so.
Yeah, it could be just my perception, possibly. I think it has changed as well. I think what's happening is there's so many people coming from, in Ireland as well, perceptions have changed. There's so many different nationalities that are moving here that people are realizing it's not just it's more of a melting pot kind of thing, and people are just getting used to seeing different dress in the street, different cultures, different habits, different foods, different ethnicities. So I think everyone is changing and welcoming that, hopefully, most of them.
So the greater sense of multiculturalism has more or less diffused any sense of racism or anti-Semitism.
Well, obviously, for some people, it's going to make it worse, But I think, as a general rule, I think, it's given people, the ability to interact with all of these people, and I think that helps.
I mean, you said you were educated in many different countries. I mean, you were in Australia and the US.
Yeah.
I mean, traveling abroad, growing up in Britain, did you find that broadened your horizons very much? I mean, did you come into contact with a lot of people from other religions?
That's a good question. Mainly not. Mainly my studies were I was doing like in a yeshiva, which is a Jewish seminary. So I went from England. I went to Canada, and I was 3 years there. Australia 3. I mean, we were traveling and meeting people, but it was mainly within the Jewish community, largely. Mm-hmm. There wasn't that much interfaith work at that point.
And what did you gain from traveling abroad, as regards broadening your own experience? What did you find?
Oh, I just think everyone should take a few years, just see different places, change perceptions, just different societies. Australia, especially, you know, it's if we can get a chance to just visit, just understand different people and just gain from everyone. You know, every culture, every nationality, everyone that we meet has something that we can take and gain and benefit from, and just see us all as one big happy family. I think that would be great.
And you studied in New York as well?
I did, yeah.
Where?
In Brooklyn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And how did you find the experience in New York compared to Great Britain?
New York's very different, very, very busy, you know. Massive Jewish community, the whole, it's just complete, like in terms of kosher food availability, like everywhere you walk, every shop, they all, you know, it's almost every product has a kosher symbol on it. So it's very easy to keep kosher. It's very easy to find synagogues. It's just the availability, the access is much, much easier. And just in terms of just being just such a vibrant city, you know, I used to enjoy going to the Twin Towers before 9/11, and just if you're there at rush hour, just as people were leaving the offices, I'd just stand there and just see the just tens of thousands of people just running around. For me, I just love to see this mass of humanity just milling around. It was just something I enjoyed at the time.
And that's the end of the first half of the interview. For the second half, my colleague Una Farrell will ask the questions.
Does she get the tough questions, yeah? Thanks, Badra. We go straight into the second half.
Welcome, Rabbi.
Thanks.
Porg was talking about, you know, the history and background and some of your own background, and I just wanted to ask you a bit more about Jewish identity and also your faith as well. Now, as a Jewish person, need not necessarily be a practicing, you know, religious Jew. I just wondered what the relationship between secular and religious Jews was.
Well, I'll start to talk about our synagogue here in Dublin. The Dublin Hebrew congregation will be quite typical in that it's officially an Orthodox synagogue, so which implies strict observance of all the laws, the Sabbath, the kosher. What you find is that many of our members are non-practicing Orthodox, you know, so they're happy affiliating, and they'll pick the things that they want to keep. So many will keep kosher food, would be very important to many of them. Coming to the synagogue on Shabbat, on the Sabbath morning, is important. You know, there'll be certain things that they value, and then the rest of the stuff would be maybe temporarily in abeyance. So there's a choice, but there's no, you know, there's a great blend of people. Some very observant, some very unobservant. Everyone is welcome.
Does that make any difference to, you know, as you said, the Jewish community is quite small here in Ireland and in Dublin. Does that pose any challenges for you, the number of secular Jews to religious Jews, in terms of growing and establishing and building the community?
That's a good question. Well, as a general community, no. You know, it makes no difference whether religious or secular. The difference would be in terms of synagogue attendance. So it's the more observant members that are going to be coming to the synagogue on the Sabbath, and you know, it's a big synagogue. It was built for many hundreds of people, and so as the community's thinned, the seats have thinned, and nobody wants to see that. We all want to, whether it's a priest or a rabbi or an imam, you want to see you know, a full house of worship. So that's a little difficult because the numbers that are in the community don't always reflect in the numbers that come to services. So, but that's our job. You know, that's my job as a rabbi and as like the synagogue executive, is to try and attract as many people as we can into the services. But that would be the only difference, I suppose, in terms of kosher food. You know, whether people keep kosher or not would affect the kosher food supply, that kind of thing.
Right. Okay. And to ask you a bit about, wanted to ask you about your faith and what your concept of God is. You know, do you see God as a sort of a remote being, or is it a God that you have a kind of personal relationship with? I just wondered what type of...
Yeah, very much a personal relationship. And so we believe that there's no need for an intermediary, you know, that every human being has a direct connection. You just have to focus and talk to God, and you have that very personal connection. So you don't have to be in a house of worship. You don't have to be with a religious leader. You can just be on your own and have that private conversation, and are encouraged, you know, to have that when in times, whether in times of need, in times of gratitude, just to always have that conversation with God and to keep that connection.
Actually, in terms of your sort of daily or weekly practice, what how do you sort of exercise your faith?
Well, prayer would be the kind of the infrastructure, the prayer services. There's 3 prayer services a day, and they're kind of short services. There's every morning there's a half-an-hour service, and every evening there's maybe a 15-minute service, and then some communities sometimes will do an afternoon service, which is about 10 minutes. So 3 short services. The Sabbath would be the main one. The Friday night, about 45 minutes, and then Saturday morning is the big one. That's about about 2.5 hours. So that's quite a long service. And then again, people will choose: do they want to come at the beginning, come in the middle? It's their choice. Right. So those are the main. That's the main day for the prayer.
Right. And sort of in light of, Pádraig touched on this a little bit about the persecution of Jews and also the Holocaust. How do you reconcile your God with those type of events?
That's the $1 million question. Yeah. Look, the world that we live in is a world that has the most amazing, beautiful things, and it has the most horrific, terrible things that happen. And the human condition is living in that world without understanding the Creator, because we're finite, God is infinite, and trying to have faith despite not understanding the whole picture. So it's almost like if you would have let's say a beautiful tapestry painting, and you have it on the wall, and you can just see the back of the tapestry. So all you see if you come in is just a mess of colors and threads, and it just looks like a mess. But the creator of the tapestry knows what's on the other side. Is that when you can understand what's on the other side, you see a most beautiful image. So, you know, what we see are the broken threads. We don't understand. We don't understand pain or tragedy or suffering. If we did, we would be infinite. We would be godly beings. We don't. But we have to believe that there's another side to the tapestry that exists, and that there is a beautiful picture that we're all part of.
And did that ever cause you a crisis of faith yourself, thinking about those events?
Look, there's always times that we question, you know, whether it's just last week, you know, little girls getting shot in the head at point blank range in France, you know, and you look at the pain of a mother left, you know, with one child, her husband, and 2 children shot. And of course we have questions. We have to question, and we have to pray to God and pray that these things don't happen, and pray that we have peace and a world of harmony, but we still have to have faith.
Yeah. Just to actually talk about historically, you know, Judaism and Christianity grew out of the same roots, and you use the Old Testament as people do also within the Christian faith, but I think it's used slightly differently. It means something different within the Jewish faith. I wondered if you could talk to us about that.
Yeah, the Torah, that's the Pentateuch, 5 books of Moses, are seen as the guidebook for life, the blueprint for how we live our life. So it's not just a history book, it's not just a book of legend or myth, it's the rule book, you know. So we believe God creates a world, He creates His people, puts them in the world, populates the world, and then puts the instruction book down, and that's our instruction book that we have to follow. So now again, depending on which strand of Judaism, Orthodox, Conservative, Reform, Reconstructionist, wherever you go on the scale, there's going to be stricter adherence to the word of the law. Now, I'm an Orthodox rabbi. I represent the Orthodox community, so we believe that the word of the Torah is immutable, it's concrete, it will never be changed, and every word of that has to be kept. So very, very rigorous adherence to, and that's how we live our lives. The laws of kosher, the laws of marriage, everything about our lives is controlled, or it's in a framework set by the Torah, the Old Testament.
Okay, and in relation to the relationship between Christianity and Judaism, historically Christianity has at times demonized Jews, and I just wondered, sort of pronouncements by, let's say, Pope John Paul II and other religious leaders, has that changed in any way the relationship between Judaism and Christianity? Are they a bit closer? Are they further apart? Where do you see the relationship between the two strands? Well, much closer, I think. There are so many times in history that Jews have had to hide their faith, for fear of punishment, death, or whatever, and had to, maybe outwardly pretend not to be Jewish, and to have the ability to live in a free country, freedom of religion, to share conferences and to share a table with people of other faith, whether it's a priest or a bishop or an imam, is incredible. That we can actually sit down and to have personal friends who are, whether it's bishops or priests, of members of the clergy, is a very wonderful thing. So there's no question that there is and improving all the time, I think. And what kind of contacts do you have here with the other faiths? Well, there are a couple of forums now. Interfaith. There's a Dublin City Interfaith Forum. There's an All Ireland one. So they're kind of all being set up and strengthened like the last year or so. And I think those are great. They bring together representatives of all the faiths in the country and sit and talk and dialogue. So I think that's important. I'm a strong believer in interfaith, maybe not so much interfaith, discussing theological, I believe, each faith can do their own, but interface, I think, is crucial. And once you're meeting and dialogue and talking, you're understanding each other, and all those misconceptions and apprehensions, they often fade away. Okay. Just wanted to know about the role of women within within the Jewish faith. Could you talk to us a little bit about that? Oh, we don't believe in women. Role of women. Women are, that's a big question. Very valuable, seen as... one of the things that prompted it was that there's been some incidences in Jerusalem where some members of the Orthodox faith have removed advertisements with images of women in it, and it kind of got quite a bit of coverage. I just wondered what your position was in relation to those kind of actions, because they do seem, from other points of view, maybe a bit extreme. Sure. Okay, that's a great question, and a great place to start talking, because the reason those images are taken down, now again, this is only in a small sector of the world, and it's a small sector of the Jewish population that would actually be exercised enough to take down pictures of immodestly dressed women. But the reason they're taking them down is not because they don't want to see images of women. It's because of this. They feel that there's the beauty of a woman is an internal thing. It's something that should be kept within a family relationship between husband and wife. It's not something for the world to see. So the law, there are very strict laws of modesty within Judaism, how people should dress, males should or females should dress. But it's not in any way to denigrate. It's just the opposite. It's meant to say, the expression actually is kal kavuda bat melech panima, that a Jewish woman is seen as a princess, as a kind of a regal figure. And the more regal a person is, the more modest generally they are. And so it's all about modesty, it's about admiration, and the less modest a person is, it's just seen as a negative way of expressing the But many women, and there have been protests there in Jerusalem itself, felt that was a restriction on their sort of self-expression, and that it would be removing images. And certainly the government or the state has been concerned about the removal of those posters.
Yeah, I don't know specifically which pictures you're talking about. So if it's just pictures of women, just women that are dressed modestly, then I would be vehemently opposed to removing them. And that would be a tiny segment of Israeli society or Jewish society. If it's talking about women that are dressed very provocatively and immodestly, then I personally wouldn't take down those images, but I can understand why in a religious community they wouldn't want their children exposed to that imagery of women. They don't want to see women as sex symbols, or they want to see women as very regal, the mother, the wife. So it's coming from a very positive angle. Unless, as I say, they just don't want pictures of women, then I do have a problem with that. So it's, yeah.
Okay, I know we're running short of time. I just want to talk to you about the significance of Israel to the Jewish faith. Obviously, the state set up in 1948. What has that meant to the Jewish community? Let's say here in Ireland, actually, bring it home.
To the founding of the state, or just the land of Israel?
Yeah.
Okay, because I think it's important to, the land of Israel is, the biblical homeland of the Jewish people, promised to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob thousands of years ago. So that's where the desire and the longing to have the land of Israel and to have that homeland and to be able to go and worship there at the site of the temple, that's where it comes from. 1948 was after 2,000 years of exile, of being exiled from the land. Jews were able to return and once again able to live there securely and set up homes. So that was seen as a very miraculous and wonderful event. Jews here were of course delighted. Some went over to live there. Many of the community would have relatives or friends that do live there. So there is a constant connection and awareness of what's going on in Israel.
And how do you see? Can you see something like a two-state solution where Palestine and Israel could live side by side? Is that a possibility that you think could happen? Well,
that's a political question, obviously not a religious one. There's nothing I would love to see more than peace and harmony in that area, that everyone has their place to live and live in peace. I don't think...
But could you see two states side by side in that area? Is that a possibility, you think?
In the near future, I don't see it happening personally, but I'm not a politician. I don't know what's going on behind the scenes. I know many people that live out there, friends, relatives, like hundreds, thousands of people that live in Israel. And I keep asking them this question: what do they think will happen? What can they think could happen? And they all say the same thing. They say that the one wish that they all share, every single person that I've spoken to, they just want to be able to shut down the army, put the weapons away, and let the mothers and parents have their kids back home. That's all they want. As soon as that happens, as soon as all the threats stop, they can put the guns down and everyone can live together in harmony. The problem is that you've got so much, they feel under so much threat all the time that it's a very, very tense area. And when you have that kind of tension, that kind of hot-blooded nature, that kind of climate, you get conflict all the time.
So do you think, what form do you think it could take, do you think, if there were two states there?
I don't know. I don't see it changing much, unfortunately, from the way it is for a long while until, I think dialogue, we learned here in Ireland, dialogue is the solution. Just talking and talking and talking, and when everyone can sit down and just dialogue until it's done, hopefully we'll get a peaceful solution.
Okay. Rabbi Zalman Lent, thank you very much for joining us here this afternoon at DCU.
My pleasure.
Do we have any questions from the floor?
Hello, Rabbi. You mentioned that you lived in New York and in the States. Do you find that, how do you feel about the representation of Jewish people in the media, particularly the US mainstream? There's often a lot of comedic references. How do you feel you meet many stereotypes?
No, I don't think so. Every ethnicity has kind of the stereotype, and I think you just have to laugh along with it, Anything specific you're referring to, or?
Well, the only ones that jump to mind immediately, I know it's a long time ago, but would be kind of Woody Allen often made reference to it, Billy Crystal, a lot of the, I suppose, comedians in the late 70s, early 80s. And would that have been kind of, would you have met much kind of people with stereotypes of Jewish people yourself?
I think, well, here in Ireland, people generally don't have much of a knowledge of the Jewish community. So there's always very inquisitive, very interested. Do they have the stereotype? I'm not sure. I just generally find people very open and very interested, you know, questioning and want to know. Okay, I think in America it's different. There are people meeting Jews all the time, so they understand Jews are not all wealthy and Jews are not all, you know, whatever the stereotypes may be. Yeah.
Rabbi, in the, say, Christian traditions, women would have some role in terms of ministry to the community in relation to maybe faith development. And I'm just wondering, in maybe around the synagogue or within the Jewish community, do women have an active role in kind of nurturing the faith of and in service of the community, or is that mostly just within the family?
There is a very strong family role, of course. There will, in the larger communities, you will have women that play that role. It's women for women, you know, so that they'll have people of faith that they go to strengthen their faith, to teach, to give classes, all the time. The only place that you're not going to, in the Orthodox community, that you're not going to find women is actually in the synagogue service, leading the services itself. And again, that's not because women are nothing negative. It's a sign. It's a modesty thing. It's the people that's standing up there in front, leading the services. It shouldn't be the guys looking up at this person and, you know, with the wrong attitude. So it's a modesty thing. But apart from that, women are very involved in every way, shape, and form. Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, I think that's all of our questions. Rabbi, again, thank you very much for joining us. Next week we will have the 6th and final in our Talking Heads series, and our guest will be Anne James, who's a representative from the Humanist Society, so from the Interfaith Centre at DCU. Thank you.